from Somalia, from Nigeria, from Fiji, come to Liberia as guests of my foundation to do the second part of their course in women's leadership. So you have all of these different connections. It's just about making efforts and trying to connect the dots. And I tell you one thing, what is also very helpful, even if you do not have money to give to some of these groups, when you go to talk or give talk in class or in public spaces, you mention them. We could not do a lot for the women of Zimbabwe. They have this group in Zimbabwe called WOZA, Women of Zimbabwe Arise. We could not go there at the time. It was so difficult to go there. But we made, as activists in Africa, an effort that everywhere we went to speak that had policy makers, we would mention the work that they were doing. And those women got the recognition that we were pushing for. So it's very important for you to do that. And when you finally make that effort to get in touch with them, it's a welcoming feeling to see that we're not in this fight alone, that our sisters in the diaspora are also working along with us. So don't even think that your work or your fight is wasted. You can. One of the other things that I told someone from Eritrea that you could do, people in the diaspora, on Facebook, there's something called Discussing Liberia. And that page is where you hear everything before it actually happens in Monrovia. And my sister, who is on that page, because I'm not, tells me, Leymah, during the election season, I knew which politician will lose their seat because of the posting on that page. She said, I can tell you now the rating of the president of Liberia as a result of that page. So you can start that kind of discussion for Somalia, for Kenya, for other places, and before you know it, even people who are in country will be coming on that page to talk about things. And when my sister called me some days, she said, listen to what I just got from Discussing Liberia. Crazy things, good things, informative things, but it's also a good space to keep connected to what is happening in the community. It's also a very good mobilization space. So don't ever feel like you're not doing the right thing or you're not doing anything for your country. And by the way, congratulations on the violent-free elections in Kenya. Whether you all did a good job with the president.
Thank you for your words. I just wanted to mention that we are lucky to have here in Maine an organization called Boys to Men, which for 15 years has been functioning as an organization to prevent violence against women by raising emotionally healthy and nonviolent boys. They have programs from media literacy to bystander education, a multitude of programs which are focused on exactly what you're talking about, starting early with boys, raising nonviolent boys, because ultimately we feel that that's the only way to stop violence against women. www.maineboystomen.com.
Thank you, but don't ever forget to get those boys to engage with girls sometimes.
Hello, thank you so much for being here. I feel like there's such a stigma on women that are raped that we either feel that if we say that we are, we seem as though we're looking for attention, or I guess that's actually usually what it is. And I feel I was raped, and I feel okay saying that because my daughter and we did have to leave the state for a while, and when people would ask me, I felt like, should I feel ashamed of this? And I thought, no. So if my house had burned down, I would have told them my house burned down, this is why we live in Vermont. So if I moved away because I was raped, I'm going to say that, and I'm going to say it to every single person every single time they ask. And I feel like here in Maine, even though we do like to feel that we are progressives, even this week, there was a hidden article in the paper of this woman who had been gang raped in Portland at King Elementary School on the playground. And the article was not about her. It was about the men having their bail denied. But it should have really been written as though the lawyer had argued that they could not be guilty of raping her because she had requested to listen to a rap artist named 2 Chainz. I've never heard of him. And instead of that becoming a large article about a lawyer in Portland just argued that a woman couldn't be gang raped if she listened to this music, it was just about these men and their bail. And how can we, as a group of people that are invisible because we're seen as the other, and we also feel embarrassed, so we don't want to say that we're raped, how can we help other women feel safer coming out and making these things not hidden pieces in our newspapers?
You know, by virtue of the fact that you've stood in this group, in this room, in your community, and you've said, I was raped, you've spoken for thousands of women who do not want to speak out. Just one person speaking out is enough to encourage another person to speak out. And you know something? You're on the right path. Don't ever feel like you did anything wrong. We say back home, it's not what you're called, it's what you answer to. And you're not a bad person. The person who raped you is the bad person. And I think henceforth, your attitude should be shoulders up, heads up high, and if anyone has any problem with stigma, that's their problem. Your problem is that you're going to live a progressive life, and you will not let what someone who had no self-esteem did to you to stop you from achieving your potential. Be the voice, even for those who are refusing to speak out. Don't ever, ever be afraid to speak out.
Oh,
I wrote my book, and in my book, I told some real stories. And people will say, thank you for being honest. And I say, there is no way that I would have told my story and left out the part about being an alcoholic, or left out the part about being battered, or left out the part about having a baby and sleeping on the floor of a hospital. There's no way, because that story is a part of my life, but it doesn't define who I am. Thank you for speaking up. One more, and then we'll go.
Well, my name is McDonald Johnson. I'm originally from Liberia, and I'm one of the less than a dozen Liberian residents in Maine. I want to first of all thank you for being here today. Thank you for giving another face to Liberia. We can not only boast of having the first woman president in Africa, but we can also boast of you being one of 2 women to win the Nobel Peace Prize in Liberia. My question to you is, how can we as men, fathers, I'm a father of a 12-year-old girl, how can we start a conversation with our daughters also about how to prevent or avoid being raped, or how they should carry themselves?
You know, one of the things that I realize that most fathers do not do, especially African fathers, they find it very difficult to reinforce the self-confidence of their daughters. I think the first step to girls really knowing themselves is self-awareness, and you are that first man that she's in love with. And the way you treat her will define how she carries herself. And the way you treat her will also define the opinion that she will form about herself. Most times I tell people, the fathers do not stop to tell their daughters, you're pretty, especially African fathers. I see most of the black men in this room laughing, and I assume that they're from Africa. They do not stop to say you're smart, you're going places. Oh, this girl, and if it's the typical Liberian family, your husband is going to have serious problem with you. So already she's married off at 3 because she's throwing tantrum. I think if you form that bond with your child, there is nothing that you can talk about. My mother thinks that I'm the craziest because I don't have the typical African home. I tell my children some of the craziest things that they get so embarrassed about. But it's the reality of life. And so I think it's important for fathers, and this is the beginning of getting involved, to sit with their daughters and start telling them that these things exist in this world, and you need to understand that it's there. If someone touch you, but most African families, the first thing they do, your daughter is growing, you need to tell her about life. So it's the women they're talking to. Honey, your child is growing and you need to tell her about life. She's another girl, so she's just telling me something. But if the father sit with this girl and really start to talk to her, likewise the mother, if they sit with their sons and start to tell them about the pains that women go through when they're abused and assaulted, I think everyone has a role. But conversation. Like the politician in that church from Liberia, he did not want to hear it. He did not want to think about it. He did not want to even consider the fact that his daughter could date in a few years. The world that we live in is a harsh world. And we really need to tell our children about the harshness of this world, because we are the first line of education for them. Trust me, in this world of technology, if you fail to tell your children, they will find out. And what they will do with that information is something that you don't want to think about. As I watched the rape trial of those 2 young men, 2 things came to mind. What is the father of that girl thinking right now? And what are the mothers of those young men thinking right now? It's one thing for your child to go to prison, but it's another thing to walk around in a community bearing the guilt that you did not bring him up to respect women. So every way we turn as women, we end up being victims. But we can change that around. We can change it around with the help of men. We can change it around if we decide to engage communities. We can change it around, like my sister, by not being silent about what is happening to us. And we can change it around if we step up, step out, stand up, and speak out. This is the century of women. If you are a father, if you're a brother, and if you're an uncle in this room, and in all of these years, you fail to do something that will make that girl in your life find her place amongst women, even as we move in this century of women, you fail to be a successful person. One thing I keep saying to myself over and over, no man, woman, boy, or girl can say they are accomplished. You are not accomplished in Maine as long as rape and abuse exists. You are not accomplished if girls have not found their rightful place. No one in this world can claim that they accomplished if injustice is still looming for women who have been affected by rape and sexual violence. Every time you decide not to think about it, just think, even if you have $1 million in your bank account, you are not accomplished until the rest of the 50% of the world population has formed some kind of accomplishment. Thank you.